Thanks for listening to the Clive Barker Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the works and worlds of Clive Barker. This is episode 153, Clive Barker's Nightbreed Epic Part 2, where David, Jose, and I'm Ryan, we talk about the Marvel epic run of Nightbreed comics, issues 7 through 12.
Hey, welcome back. We're going to be talking about the Nightbreed comics that were published by Marvel in the 90s, and we're going to discuss issues 7 through 12 today. So again, I am Joe, and we got Ryan.
Hey.
And David Sharp.
Hello.
So nice to have you guys here. We ended last episode with what we were talking about these comic books. We ended in kind of a bit of a cliffhanger because these rogue Nightbreed characters had just attacked a diner, and in fact they ended up blowing it up. So
yeah. And they barbecued the people inside and ate them.
Yeah. So that's the kind of monsters they want to be.
The Blasphemers.
Mm-hmm. You know, I have to say this comic book it plays it very loose with cannibalism, and I'm not sure I'm entirely 100% okay with it.
Oh, you mean about like, oh, it's so tempting and...
Yeah, no, it's just the way that they actually, like, all the characters in this book that are Nightbreed at one point or another seriously considered cannibalism.
Yeah, it's a common theme with like every character's arc.
I know.
Yeah. It is weird, isn't it? Because you would think it would only be some of them. I mean, why do they all feel like... I mean, Kinski is a guy who drank a magic potion that turned his face into the moon. Why would he be tempted to eat humans?
Yeah.
It's part... They just kind of made the trope that this is what it is, that the Nightbreed are kind of ghouls or vampires or whatever, and so they have to have this hunger for human flesh.
Yeah, it kind of made them more monster than the film Nightbreed did.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah. So I'll just have to say a little intro here. I've been having some fun falling back into this nostalgia of rereading these issues. Some of these I haven't read in a long while. I first read these in Portuguese because Brazil released them translated very close to the time that they were coming out in the U.S. But I think they only published up to the ending of this Blasphemers story arc, which means it... Yeah, so I think they only published like 10 issues. So I only read the rest sporadically when I could get comics from the U.S. through the mail. Mm-hmm. Until one day, of course, I found an entire set on eBay. I think it cost like $40, something like that. Yeah. And that's when I got my full collection. And I literally devour them.
That's good news for Clive Barker fans, because it's still like that. I mean, you can find whole sets of them for, $20, $30, $40.
Yeah, that's a good starter thing if you really want to get the entire collection. And if you just pay enough attention, you'll be able to get an entire set. And I still have some pages of original comic art from some of these comic books. I even have a cover. One of them is by artist Colleen Doran, and she, I think, made the cover for issue number 22 that has Baphomet in the cover. So I guess I'll have to... Nice. I'll have to fish out a picture of that and put it in the show notes if I can.
That's cool.
Yeah. So you guys want to get started with issue 7?
Yeah. So issue 7 is the Blasphemers, and like you said, it picks up where we left off. It's got a cover image of Dagon or Dagon. I don't know how you say that, but he's the crab guy with the giant pinchers, and he wears that hoodie like it's gonna make him look like a human. Which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
This issue has my favorite title of all of them, The Sacrament of Meat.
Yeah.
Which kind of falls in with the cannibalism, thing, but I think it's very, very cool.
Sacrament of Meat. Yeah. Hey, that's something that happens in church. They say, this is my body, this is my blood,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, there's always been kind of this idea of the sacrament of communion, and every Sunday a lot of pillars of society go into the church, and they choose to eat the flesh of Christ and drink the blood of Christ. So that's interesting. how that became a ritual in that religion.
Yeah.
This picks up where the last one left off, where Kinski and company kicked the door in on the hotel room where Boone and Laurie were staying. And, of course, they have to remind us that this is a comic book, so Cabal turns into his monster form and starts threatening to kill him and stuff. It's like, in real life, he'd be kind of like, hey, that was rude. Why'd you do that?
It's like the Marvel Comics have this unstipulated rule that every time two characters meet in a situation of tension, they have to fight.
Yeah.
Even if they're superhero and Spider-Man, or there was actually a crossover. That's not a good example. But there's heroes go to team up against villains, and then first they have to duke it out a little bit, and then finally they realize
they
we're
come
both
to
on
their
the same
senses.
side.
Yeah. It even happens in the movies, right? Like in the Avengers, Iron Man and Thor got in a fight with each other for what seemed like kind of no real good reason.
It's part of the Marvel, enhanced drama that they use for their stories. So we continue in this issue with Brett Blevins' art for a while. He's a great artist. He's worked in all sorts of superhero comics. I really dig his style. It's kind of cartoony, but I really, really dig this style, even though he did some really weird changes to some of the characters. So this story arc is called the Blasphemers, right? Okay, so clearly there would be little groups of breed in Midian that never cared about the law. My only question is how they lived there for so long. I guess they were just biding their time, or maybe laying low, probably hiding from previous crimes that they committed. And they really weren't all about the Midian laws. But now that Midian's gone, I guess they just feel like they can just cut loose.
Well, and they could pretty much avoid Baphomet all the time, right? Because he's stuck down there in his chamber. And so, like Peliquin didn't seem really that bothered with the idea of breaking the law.
Yeah, and he was inside the cemetery, right? So that's a starting point. I think that became almost like a trope of its own in Nightbreed, that all the Nightbreeds, all the tribes of the moon want to eat human flesh. I guess that doesn't really make a lot of sense, like what you were saying about Kinski, but that's what they're going for here. And hey, who said comics will rot your brain? I learned something from this issue.
Yeah.
The Dwight D. Eisenhower National System of Interstate and Defense Highways. I had no idea that this started out being a network of highways that would form, for troops to move around the United States in case of emergencies. And then they just decided to expand that, and they started opening it to the public, and it became like where a lot of truckers in America go. And, so I had not known that it started out as part of a defense thing, the system of highways. Cool. So that's cool.
Like the internet. The internet started out as
DARPA.
Defensive measure so that universities could protect their information in case we were attacked.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I don't want to go on a tangent, but there's a really awesome documentary by Werner Herzog called Lo and Behold, which is the story of the internet and how the internet evolved as a superhighway of information and all that. So the first message ever sent on the internet was they had to punch in 3 letters, LOG, log, between 2 computers. And so they were punching the L, and the operator on the other side of the phone line said, I can see the L. Then they punched the O, and he said, I can see the O. And then when they punched G, the connection dropped. So that was the first communication that they did on the internet, and it was low. So lo and behold.
Yeah, wow. That's funny.
Yeah, that is a brilliant documentary.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I really recommend it. So, I mean, I like the story. I like the opening of it. I think it's very dramatic. We see this truck, and at first it seems like it's just an ordinary truck, but then you see that there's a giant crab on top of it. And Ryan, you have a thing about crabs, don't you?
Right. Yeah. Yes, they're awesome. I have a crab character that I drew in junior high that in a finger puppet, and it just And people always give me things that are shaped like crabs, and I have lots of that stuff in my house. But yeah, I think he is cool.
That's cool. You used to have Emmett the Crab. You know, hey people, you want to see something really funny? Go look on YouTube for Emmett the Crab, and I'm sure you'll find Ryan's old episodes that he did for that puppet. It's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and Narcisse came back from the dead. And I think he was in the last issue also, that Narcisse was there for no reason, and he's back here.
Someone called the editors out in the mail section of the magazine at one point of the comic book, they were asking
in issues 11 and 12. Yeah.
Right. They were like, "Hey, how come Narcisse came back? I thought he was decapitated back at the issue number 4." And then they were just giving a vague explanation saying that, well, and I have this theory about Nick Niven, the witch, with her head is detachable. And I think they just did that so they could bring back Narcisse. So they could be like, hey, if this witch can take off her head and live, Narcisse can do it too.
Their response was, we'll be doing a story arc in the near future that will explain the story behind Narcisse, his resurrection, and the price he paid for it. Count on it.
Right.
And then they also said, we can't tell you the answer here because we're going to be doing a book specifically on what happened to Narcisse. So, they promised it in 2 separate letters on 2 separate issues, but it still never happened.
So after Kinski and Narcisse and Cabal figure out that, hey, everything's fine, no need to get your panties in a bundle, but so they discover that the TV is playing something about the diner that was attacked by these I'm going to call them the Blasphemers. And so did I miss something, or how did they know what Motel Boone was? I that was something I didn't really understand how they figured it out, because the Blasphemers pull up the big rig right in front of that motel where all the other breed members are. And I just, any explanation on how they discovered that he was there?
I don't know. And then they also had this guy with him that could take his spine out and whip people with it. And he's, I can't remember Guido. What his name. Yeah, Guido. And he just sort of appears like everybody knows him, and it's like, oh hey, it's Guido. It's like, well, who is this guy? And I thought he was going to be a red shirt for this arc.
Yeah, but I think he lasted a few issues.
Mm-hmm. All the way to the end. He was all the way in the finale. Yeah. But I think their reasoning for knowing that Boone and company were in that hotel was just a gut feeling.
Okay, I can work with that.
He just points at it and says, "I know they're in there. I have a feeling about it."
Hey, if Ashbury can sniff out the breed, I mean, that's not a big stretch that some breed would be able to sense others. So
that's another thing. They sort of teased Ashbury and Eigerman, which, by the way, Eigerman looks absolutely nothing like his movie character.
Yeah.
Figgin. But Ashbury does not right. They don't really play much of a part in this series or this arc.
Yeah, it's just like a quick little side story, right? Looks like it's going to set up something bigger later on.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's we just see them do something in a church and hint that Ashbury wants to get his stuff that he put away or he hid in the church, and they were trying to do some sort of ritual, a blasphemous ritual in that church that they were prevented from doing so by the priest that was there, and he locked them out of the church. But I want to go back to that TV when they're watching TV that the diner blew up, and there's these little details throughout the story that I think are really funny. The TV station that's reporting this is WRIP, WRIP. So that's one of the. Yeah. And another funny thing I want to say is that there's a page where the motel manager, which is about to get invaded by the Blasphemers, he's on the phone with his wife. And this is like a guy who's just wearing like a dirty T-shirt, like a wife beater shirt and sweatpants. And he's got all these porn like on his wall of his office. And he's trying to convince his wife that he can get more custody visits from their daughter. I'm like, that is a horrible idea. This guy seems like he's a terrible, terrible father.
They spent like a page and a half on that, and just as a setup for him getting murdered by the Blasphemers.
And I love the way Piglet just butts into the office, and he just gets on the phone, and he just he tells the woman on the other line that says, "Tell your daughter to go play in traffic, take rides with strangers, mix a milkshake with what's under the kitchen sink." I think Piglet would be a great life coach, guys.
Yeah.
He kind of sets his inside to match his outward appearance, so he's like kind of this demonic, impish thing. It reminded me of when he says that mix up the milkshake with the stuff you keep under the sink. It reminds me of that old Mr. T motivational cartoon that someone remixed. If you believe in yourself, eat all your school, stay in milk, drink your teeth, don't you sleep, get 8 hours of drugs. I love that. So,
yeah, that moment when I flip the page and I see that shot of him asking for more time with his daughter, and there's porn all next to him. It's so bizarre, and it's kind of the first of many bizarre sexual references throughout this series.
There's another one a little later I wanted to talk about too. Or is that in this issue, the thing with where they're in the grocery store and Narcisse does the jumbo
8.
tampons or whatever?
I think that's 8,
that's
right?
the next one.
That's like another 2 pages of that.
Yeah, and then there's like Narcisse making like rapey comments and stuff throughout.
Yeah. So the Blasphemers attack the office, and then they attack the room where all the Nightbreed are, like Guido, Boone, and Laurie. Mm-hmm. And so they start fighting, and Laurie's taken hostage. And so when they go outside, they discover the Mulciber has turned the motel manager into like basically an outdoor luau for try to convince them. It's a marshmallow roast. I like mine charred and gooey. How about you? That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That is crazy. So there's a back and forth, and they kind of talk about, hey, you're Cabal, you're the savior, but we want to do our own thing. We don't want to follow the rules. So what do you say? And he kind of rips out this steaming rib from the motel manager, who's still squirming. And he puts it in Boone's face, and you just see this like little cloud of aroma going into Boone's nose. And you just think that it's like a cartoon when a cartoon character starts flying and just following the little trail of aroma to the food.
Yeah, and like the aroma's making a finger to come follow it.
Yeah, it's like, come on. And so he says, smells good, tastes good. And then you see that, it looks like Boone is going to touch it with his tongue. And then it's like, you can take your meat and choke on it. And so, of course, Cabal immediately transforms, and there's the counter strike of the Nightbreed where Laurie gets pretty bloody. Laurie kind of, she kind of does something permanent to Dagon. She kind of grabs his like little crabby eyes and kind of pulls him out and blinds him. Damn, girl. Did you guys have a problem
with trying to figure out who you were seeing between Boone and Alan Reitgrig and and Guido? That they all kind of looked really similar to each other.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I think so. Sometimes I wasn't sure if I was looking at mostly between Cabal and Alan. Those two guys. Yeah, they kind of look similar in some of the pages because they both have a mullet.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of unfortunate. I mean, because they could have made this Alan Reitgrig look like anybody. Why do they make him look like Boone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the confusion of the fight, there's the little creature that only has one eye and one arm and one leg. Mm-hmm. I think his name is Fashan, or I don't know if that's the way to pronounce it, but I like that he's the guy driving the big rig, and he says something like oh man, we should have gotten an automatic, because obviously he can't. But he crashes into the motel, and you see these like people just wearing nothing but towels, being like, "Oh, I knew it. I told you something like this would happen if we went to one of these kinky sex motels."
Yeah.
Because monsters just crash into all the motels.
I was expecting Cleveland from the Cleveland Show to be inside the bathtub and going like, "No, no, 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 no."
Somebody's yelling, "Not again."
Yeah. And this is where they find Alan, the guy who is going to be very important in this story arc. He's one of the guys at the motel, and he kind of gets really impressed at what's going on. And there's an interesting new element in the dynamic between the breed and the naturals, in the sense that up to this point, most humans / naturals either hate the breed or for being different, or are scared of them with good reason.
Yeah.
But now that they're scattered in our world, it seems like some humans, like Alan, like what they're seeing, and they kind of get attracted to the breed life. So it's an interesting flip there.
They admire it.
Yeah. So after the fight, of course, the blasphemers escape, I guess, and I like the fact that Narcisse is threatening to eat Piglet in several parts.
Yeah.
That's the whole dynamic of the fight between Narcisse and Piglet. Is he goes like, "Here, piggy," and he's got a fork.
That huge fork chasing him around with it.
Yeah, and even as he holds on to the big rig as the blasphemers drive away, and Piglet just holds on to the back of the truck, and you see Narcisse running after it, going, "Soo-wee, soo-wee,
Yeah.
Come here, pig. Love me some breed bacon."
Yeah.
So Alan gets really interested in this and says, "What do you know? There's a god, and it's got fangs and claws and kicks some serious ass." So you can tell here that Alan is getting really interested in being a part of this. He wants in. So yeah. And then, like you said, Eigerman and Ashbury show up. And in this issue, Eigerman, in this entire adaptation of the comic books, he has a different look than his movie counterpart, played by Charles Hayde. This Eigerman looks heavier, older, more like a Archie Bunker kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, this goes back to what Clive wanted to do with Ashbury and Eigerman, which was that they would follow the breed, and Ashbury would be like the bloodhound to Eigerman's, hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, of course, doesn't work in the Cabal cut and the director's cut now because Eigerman is dead.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say Ashbury looks like a Lucio Fulci zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so Alan followed the big rig. That's what we're led to believe. And he's kind of, he discovers where the blasphemers hold up, which was an old theater. And he has his own plan. He has his own plan to go in there and pitch his idea on how he can help them. So for an event,
like
yeah.
Oh, I like that panel of him in the coffee shop with the steam coming up with the monsters in it.
That's really cool. That is really cool. And we guess that he's just sitting there drinking coffee because it's the cheapest thing you can get. And then when the waitress comes over and says, "Do you want anything else?" And he says, "Yeah, I want you to get your fat butt out of my way." And she says, "Just so you know, I spit in your eggs."
So she already did it before he said that.
Hey, I think that's a service she does for every single customer that goes in there. Because she hates her life.
Yeah.
So yeah, these breed in the theater. I guess they're just cutting it loose, but it's like they're just like big giant kids in a way, because the way that they're represented, they just seem like they have absolutely no strategy, no project about what they're going to do.
Yeah. And
Mulciber is actually just having fun destroying the theater, I guess.
Well, and we actually learn later on that Mulciber really is a kid, and somehow he's the leader of all of these other guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he has a special reason for hating the theater, and we'll get to that near the end of this story arc. But so what happens here is that Alan pulls kind of like a Inglourious Bastards kind of thing, whereas the monsters are having fun inside the theater. and the lights come on. There's fires that start around the theater, and Alan shows up carrying a lot of guns and saying, "Hey, I locked all the exits. Everything is wired. So it's a nice day out, and I bet none of you guys are in good terms with Mr. Sunshine." Again, this is another one of those tropes in Nightbreed where none of the Nightbreed can actually walk in the sun. So originally it was just Onaka, but that's just the people just take that and run with it.
And what happened to Onako is completely different from the way the sun was affecting Babette.
Yeah.
So, and Rachel even said the sun can kill some of us.
Exactly. She didn't say all of us. So, but that's just the way things evolve here. They just, all the breed want to eat human flesh, and they all get killed by the sun. So.
Right. Yeah. Laurie and Boone even say something like, make a joke about turning into crispy, like something or other.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what Alan wants really is to be a part of the Nightbreed. So his deal is, I help you get rid of Boone. I got the firepower. I got the explosives. I got the strategy. And in return, you guys will give me the Knights. Yeah. And it kind of reminded me of the tagline for Nightbreed, which was, the Knight has a new hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this case.
And he never really notices, but they never actually agree to do that. Every single time he mentions, like, he talks about it like it's some kind of contract they have, but they're always like, oh yeah, whatever, or, don't worry, you'll get what's coming to you.
He can't read between the lines.
No.
I guess there is a double entendre there. Yeah, that's true.
And
you don't know at one point.
An action movie from the 80s where they always say, oh, don't worry, you'll get what's coming to you.
Yeah. So to be continued, of course, and then you have issue 8, which has an interesting title. It's called "Light Me a Candle," said Flesh to the Flame. Going on with the same theme of like barbecuing human flesh, I guess.
Yeah. And it's got Aiello on the cover, but she's got that cool, more gothic look instead of the red hair punk look that she actually has in the pages of the comics.
Yeah, it looks better on the cover.
Yeah, I think so too.
I agree. I think that in this one with the white hair, she kind of looks more like a harpy, whereas Brett Blevins gave her red hair, and it's not that it looks bad. It's just that I don't know. I think the white hair makes her look more like a harpy, whereas the other one just, I don't know. I don't
really know or understand Aiello's personality either, right? Because she seems like she talks about herself in the third person, and she doesn't really seem to have, other than that, much of a personality or intelligence.
There's been a lot of comments. Even she makes comments about how she's not smart.
Yeah.
But she knows that she is cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
she knows how good she looks because Oral has and Oral is the name of one of these guys. So Oral thinks that she is very cute, and at one point she says, "Yeah, I know. I see you looking at me," and it's just a couple of these characters are very childlike in their personality. Like the Aiello is one, and then the other one is Dagon. Dagon also appears to be this giant monster, but he doesn't really communicate very well. He's very stuttery. But anyway, so this issue we open with Father John Tiernan, who's a friend of Ashbury's, we're led to believe. So he wakes up in the middle of the night to find Ashbury rummaging through the church. And it seems that Ashbury is a man of secrets in this series as well as the Boom series.
Yeah. It's weird. You don't really get that impression from him in the movie at all. I mean, other than the little hint from the name calling that he wears women's underwear.
Yeah. So they were trying to perform some sort of ritual in the church, and Ashbury keeps mumbling about wanting to get his stuff back and that he saved it in the attic of the church. But so Eigerman is there, and I think Eigerman thinks of these men of the cloth as being kind of lesser men because, like, he's the alpha, and they're wearing smocks. remember, pacifists are seen by argument as being weak, but he still gets expelled from the church anyway. In a sequence that reminds me a little bit of Jesus whipping the moneylenders out of the temple for blasphemy. Because as soon as the priest, John Tiernan, sees that, he's like, what? You guys need to get out of here. And it's like, I don't care what you guys are doing. So yeah, that's an interesting sequence there. There is no real payoff in this entire story arc, but I guess we'll see what develops in the upcoming issues.
Yeah. It's been a long time, and I don't remember, so I'll be looking forward to that again. It
seems like they were doing some sort of ritual to summon Baphomet. That's the idea that I got. So, Alan, we discover his last name is Rit Gehrig.
I think it's Reitgrig or Reitgrig.
At first, I thought this might be an anagram. And I played around with it, and I tried to figure out if this was like, I saw that there could be like, it seemed very similar as an anagram for trigger, but then there were too many letters for that. So I guess I did play around with it, but I couldn't find out if this was an anagram for something. But anyway, so he's testing his aim in an alley. He's with Stanley, a man of the underground. He wants to join in on the action. He sees him shooting, and he sees that he's buying all these guns, and he's like, hey, I want to be part of this. And the guy says, yeah, no, just do what you're doing. That's fine. I'm doing my own thing. And at one point, Stanley even suggests, hey, would you like live puppies for target practice? It's like, this is horrible.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, maybe some other time. I'd consider that, but not right
now. So that's pretty unsettling. And then we see that the Blasphemers are watching like a Mission Impossible style briefing in the abandoned theater. They look bored out of their minds. So Alan is giving them their pitch.
And can I jump in here about this, because his pitch involves using the movie theater projector, and he's projecting hotel camera footage onto the movie screen.
I know, right?
He converted it from the VHS.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Like Motel security camera records on 16 millimeter? What?
Yeah, and this is the dumbest. I don't like this character, and a lot of it comes from this scene here, where he's figured out way more than he should have from just watching a fight between some Nightbreed.
Yeah, he kind of knows their whole history from a couple minutes of action.
And he knows all their names. Yeah,
I can't get over the fact that basically Alan is showing them a presentation of his plan to get rid of the enemies, in exchange for admission into the breed's gene pool, I guess.
Yeah. And we don't know that any of them are even capable of turning him into Nightbreed.
I guess they would just bite him.
Yeah, but that's only that's only Boone and Narcissus and Peliquin, as far as we know, that can do that.
Yeah.
And the blood of Baphomet, I guess.
But, to keep things simple, once you see something happen in the Nightbreed universe, then that's how it happens.
That's for everybody,
It's for everybody. It's the law. So Stanley, of course, he was curious about what was going on because he sold so many guns to Alan, and he kind of followed him, and he butts into the theater, and he gets caught. Yeah. And he says, okay, well, again, I just want to help. Anything I can do. And they're like, oh, okay. So...
Don't worry, you'll fit right in.
Yeah. Get in my belly.
Yeah.
And how stale is that popcorn that Piglet's eating?
Oh, God, I know.
Well, geez, don't worry about the popcorn. Worry about the butter that he says has been just congealing for months in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So, but cannibalism just keeps getting put at the forefront of this story.
Yeah.
So, and I think, doesn't someone say pass the ketchup? I think so. I think it's Piglet or something. I've just got it on my notes here. Pass the ketchup. So, yeah. Well, humans do eat pork and seafood, and certain people really shouldn't eat bacon or pork, especially if you're Muslim, or food that's not kosher, for example, if you're Jewish, or beef in certain cases if you're a Brahmin Hindu. So religion does have a way of getting itself involved in certain social reforms that invade some aspects of human life. So I bring this up because this is the Nightbreed thing: is you shall not eat human flesh, and that's kind of like the thing that they're railing against here.
Yeah.
But just like people, people cherry pick the way they live, what they follow, based on what faith they have. And in some ways, what the Blasphemers are doing here kind of echoes a lack of adherence to religious law.
Yeah.
Except they know that their God is real and that his avatar is Cabal.
Yeah, and also I have a little bit of a problem with their plan because it seems a little aggressive. It seems to me that they could have gotten away with going around killing people and eating them for a long time if they decided to just do that instead of, like, let's find Cabal and kill him so we can keep doing this forever. It's like, or you could just get killed, trying to do that.
Or they could try not doing a giant bonfire outside of a hotel where everyone can see them.
They could be a little more subtle, exactly.
More subtle, yeah. That wouldn't be bad. So our heroes are regrouping back at Nick Naven's, and I just have to say, Guido is completely bonkers as a character. I have no idea how they thought this guy was a good idea. To me, it's bananas that this guy can just rip out his spinal column at will and just use it as a weapon.
Yeah. Or anything.
For anything. At one point, they're going to use it
to see,
yeah, as a engine belt for like a truck.
And then,
that doesn't even fit there.
When he takes it out, he's like, "Oh, it's going to be hell cleaning this off or something." And I'm thinking,
yeah, it's got engine grease on it.
Yeah, you're putting engine grease right back into your body.
I know. Well, it's like I don't understand how he does it. I mean, I can understand like Wolverine ripping a hole in his hand every time he pops his claws off, and then he pops them back in, but he's got a healing factor. But this guy just goes like, oh, let me just stick my hand here and let's rip.
Yeah.
And just, I'm just going to put it back in there somehow.
Yeah. Doesn't that also have his nervous system in there?
Yeah. I wonder what his story is as a breed member of the Nightbreed.
I thought we were going to see that, and then we didn't, right?
Yeah.
We saw an origin story about why he likes working with cars or something.
They should have said that his spine is actually the Tingler. You guys know the Tingler? For anybody out there who's not familiar with it, there's a movie with Vincent Price, and it's really funny. It's funny, not too scary, but it's really funny. It's a product of the times of when theater relied on gimmicks to sell tickets, put butts on seats. So, they could have said, he's a member of Nightbreed. The Tingler is real, and it's in his spinal column. That's what I'm going to choose from now on to believe.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's some. There was some a funny part here, and also in issue 8. What was that? Oh, there was a quote about all the bad things, the insides of Twinkies, Domino's Pizza, Jolt Cola. It's like so early 90s. I remember it was such a big taboo thing, and I rode my bicycle to a store to get a Jolt Cola because they were so taboo, and I drank one, and it's like, this tastes like crap.
Yeah, it was like flat pop.
Exactly.
That thing made a comeback on Amazon not too long ago, Jolt.
Really?
Yeah, I think that was their second comeback, because then they had the ones where they had those twist tops where it made that loud popping sound when you opened them.
Uh-huh.
They were like nitrous sealed or something like that. So when you opened it up, it was like just a loud explosion sound. It sounded like it was going to shoot through your hand. I want to say that was in like the early to mid 2000s.
Oh my God.
There are people who just collect old sodas, especially limited runs and stuff. I mean, there's people who still to this day would like to see a return of Crystal Pepsi. You know, that's crazy. But you see people with names out there called like Liquid Crystal Pepsi or something like that, and it's like, okay. I don't know. I guess Coca-Cola, if it was clear, it would be kind of different. Just I don't know. It wouldn't be the same.
That was Nick Naven, I think, right? That I'm just remembering. She was the one that she was making like a witch's brew that had all these terrible things in it, the inside of Twinkies, Domino's Pizza, and Jolt Cola.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
A witch's pantry is always a horrible place. Very gross. Yeah. There's one point where, of course, she has to have like the jars of eyeballs and the preserved toads and all that. And Narcisse is going through the pantry, and it's like, oh, this is all gross stuff.
Yeah. And she said, like, oh, you can find good things if you just know where to look.
So Laurie is still figuring out what her power is. So the transformation, apparently, this is what they're going with. The transformation into Nightbreed comes from a place deep inside you. And, she still hasn't found out what she's going to be.
Yeah, it's like the Nuncio, right, in the Great and Secret Show.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, which is not, it's not what the movie and Cabal are about. I mean, it was really just specific to Peliquin, turning people into Nightbreed.
Or like when in the Marvel Universe, mutants usually discover their powers at puberty.
Yeah.
That's when which is theoretically when people kind of figure out who they are, I guess, or start figuring out who they are.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there's that scene when they go out to get some food or whatever from the supermarket. There's Narcisse puts on a headscarf, looks like a little babushka, and there's a joke about tampons that you were talking about, right?
Yes, for 2 pages. So what I didn't understand, did Narcisse have those in his stuff, and he just pushed that over into that lady's stuff when she's checking out, just for a joke?
No, I think she actually wanted to buy the tampons. What he does
I think he was sliding them over, right?
Oh, he peeled the tag off of them or something?
Yeah, the price tag, and he shoves it down a little bit.
And then they have to do a price check. And at the same time, he gets on another phone from a cashier and calls for a price check on tax. And so the reply that comes in first is that the reply to the price on the tampons comes a reply that says, are those the ones you just push in, or you have to hammer them?
Yeah.
Because they're talking about the tax.
Yeah.
So the lady gets really, really embarrassed and leaves.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, and then one of the people is reading a tabloid that says, Blevins is Elvis's space baby. Of course, that's the artist, Brett Blevins. So they inserted himself into the story there. Yeah. And we find out that Narcisse just has really, really bad acne.
Yeah,
right.
that was believable in any way.
Yeah.
Totally unbelievable. But, they get a sympathetic police officer who's a rookie. He still has some acne, so he kind of cuts him a break.
And
he makes fun of the kid's acne.
Yeah, he does. And there's this weird sort of running theme or motif where Narcisse, every time he takes his hat off or something, somebody has to remind him, hey, people are going to... Like when they're in Nick Naven's shack and his hat is off and Laurie says, hey, humans are going to recognize you if you have without your hat on. It's like, where do you think he is right now? Why can't he take his hat off when he's in a witch's hut?
So another thing that's introduced in this issue is that there are these magic eggs that Nick Naven apparently has from these crazy-looking chickens in a coop.
Yeah.
And they're going to come in handy later in the story. But for now, I think that when they go back to Nick Naven, they're talking about what happened outside the motel. And I think that Boone seems pretty open to discussing their human meat urges and why they shouldn't eat it. There's a funny moment when Kinski is talking to the little girl. I think her name is Tater. And he hints that the god Pan is real, and he's a Nightbreed that he used to know, because he makes her a panpipe for the little girl. Yeah, so I thought that was an interesting detail.
Well, and Lude's father was supposed to be a satyr.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. In the Nightbreed Chronicles.
So maybe he could be Pan or related to Pan somehow.
I get this idea that this little girl Tater, she reminds me of kind of a parody of the little girl from the Frankenstein movie, the one that gets thrown into the water.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's how she's introduced, actually, right? It's like there's on issue number 6 or whatever, there's a guy who's going to attack the little girl, and then she turns into a monster and gets him first. So,
which is cool, because it's that Nightbreed theme that the humans are the real monsters, and kind of a neat way to do that.
So another funny moment here is, I don't know if you guys ever had this. I don't know how rural your childhood was, but I remember going to my grandfather's farm when I was a kid, and usually there'd be someone, a neighbor or whatever, that would have like this still in their basement, and after making wine, they would just grab the crunched up stuff that is not part of the wine, the bunched up grapes that were fermented, and you stick them in this copper thing, and you distill out the moonshine.
Oh.
Mm.
And so Nick Naven has still, and she takes Narcisse there to take a swig of her hooch.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny because when they drink it, she says, "Careful, it's got a kick." And
then kaboom.
Yeah. Like he's not even lighting anything near it, but as soon as he drinks it, there's a big explosion and they're both like thrown out, and Nick Naven's head comes off, and he says, "That's some kick."
Yeah, right.
And then
like,
that's when we realize
that wasn't the hooch. That was, somebody's attacking us.
Right. So I wonder where they got a tiny little helmet for that one-eyed little freak. But
right.
that little one-eyed monster has a tiny little helmet on.
Yes.
And a tiny little raincoat.
Well,
I don't know where they got that.
And daggone, they strapped like shotguns to his claws, but he's got no way of pulling the trigger on those.
Hey, I just made a connection here that, do you remember when Midian Unmade was open for submissions? And both you and I sent some stories. You sent a story that involved the giant crab monster that was part of the Nightbreed, right? What was the name of that story?
Jerry's Left Hand.
Yeah. You posted that on our blog once, didn't you?
Yeah, it's still there. You might have to go back a ways. That was like 2014, I think, that we did that.
Yeah. I'll probably add a link to that to the show notes so people can go read that story, because I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, now apparently I'm ripping off the comics. I'd completely forgotten about this character.
Well, it's just, you really like crabs, so I just thought that was interesting because now I was looking at Dagon and I was just making that connection in my mind. So anyway, so it turns out that Nick Naven's Moonshine is going to make some great flamethrowers, and we're left in this another cliffhanger, which goes on to issue number 9.
Yep, this one is called The Blasphemers Part 4, The Chicken Coop of the Soul, which was funnier back then because there were all those Chicken Soup for the Soul books that were popular at the time. I don't know how many people even think about those anymore.
I think they still make them.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, I've seen them at Barnes & Noble from time to time, up in the front.
Yeah, right, cool. In the discount rack.
Yeah,
because that was not a cultural reference that I would know because I didn't grow up here. So
it started out just there was a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul, and it was a bunch of little passages and things that were inspirational, and then it became like a brand, and they kept it was like Chicken Soup for the fisherman's soul, or Chicken Soup for
it was officially licensed from Campbell's too.
Oh really?
Oh really?
Yeah, because I like the Campbell's soup logo on the cover of it.
Well, in Hellraiser Anthology Volume 2, the Pinocchio story is supposed to parody a series of children's books, isn't it? Like the Little Golden Book?
Golden Books, yeah.
Yeah. So, issue number 9, I love this cover. It's got one of my favorite blasphemers, who is Oral, and it's got his giant smile full of knives and scissors and
the nail clippers. I like that.
Yeah,
pizza cutter.
Yeah.
So great. I mean, once again, the humans are supplying weapons to help breed kill breed. Yeah. Nick Naven makes Molotov cocktails for this gun party.
Yeah.
With her moonshine, so that's good. So and they even mentioned something here when Narcisse asks Nick Naven what she's throwing, this flaming cocktail Molotov. He says, "Primal forces, right? Strong magic, spirits of the bottle." And she's like, "No. Where'd you learn that? The Necronomicon? No, the Anarchist's Cookbook."
Yeah.
Which is a staple of 90s internet.
Yeah.
In case you don't know about it, it's a recipe, a book of recipes for really dangerous things that got a lot of people hurt. And became kind of like its own urban legend, like illegal in all these countries, the Anarchist's Cookbook. So basically just a way to radicalize young, angry men who have a lot of time on their hands.
Well, and here the characters start opening up these eggs in this issue, right? They're since they're trapped in this chicken coop. For some reason, these characters with guns are afraid to approach the chicken coop with all the the good guys huddled in it. But
yeah, I was wondering if I missed something as to why they couldn't just shoot through a chicken coop.
It's a magical chicken coop.
Yeah, I mean, Dagon has bazookas strapped to him, like he couldn't just blow it up.
I know, right? It's but I want to get this page here that there's a detail that I think most people just pass through it and think, oh, that's cute, that's adorable. There's Kinski talking to the little girl Tater, but once you read what he's telling her, it's kind of a little creepy. Yes. It's like. He's telling Tater, he's like whittling this little idol, and he says, and this will be what's called a fertility doll, Tater. So when you grow up, and it's interrupted, I'm like, what the hell is he going to tell her?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how old Tater is, to be honest. She could be like 200 years old for all I know. But I was just like, oh, that's kind of weird.
That's a running gag with Narcisse, right? That he's always just about to say or do something terrible, but he gets interrupted.
Yeah.
Right. But here it's Kinski, and it's like it's out of character for him. You don't expect
Kinski.
him.
I forgot that.
Yeah.
Because he's always been like a Tater's friend, like in the previous issues. So it's just weird to see a comment like that.
Yeah, it is weird.
So immediately that.
Oh, sorry. He also Kinski says something really interesting when they're talking about why they shouldn't eat meat. Kinski says, because before it was always like, you always got the impression it's like, well, that's what Baphomet wants, so that's the law, that's what we're going to do. But here he says, if we give in and eat meat and eat humans, then we're no better than animals.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to understand the strategy that the Blasphemers are trying to do, because basically they want to get rid of Baphomet's righteous anger at their breaking the law, but how does killing Cabal work that, though? I mean, you know what I'm trying to say?
My understanding is that because once he finds them a place to live, then he reassembles Baphomet.
Right.
Baphomet, yeah.
Yeah, and then once Baphomet's put back together, then he'll be like, hey, which one of you guys have been eating meat while I was gone?
Meat eaters up front now.
Yeah. I was asking that because just before they run into the chicken coop that you see Kinski saying that they've broken the covenant and eaten human meat. Now the only way for them to escape Baphomet's wrath is by killing the Savior. So I was just trying to understand that, but yeah, I see that. I mean, he's basically like the avatar of Baphomet. So I guess if they destroy the entire possibility of the prophecy being fulfilled, I guess they can just remain in the world forever. Not that they couldn't, but even if they created a new Midian, they don't have to go to that new Midian. That's just my point.
It seems weird, too, that, you'd think Baphomet would have bigger things to worry about than, okay, which one of you guys broke the law? I don't know. I mean, it seems kind of beneath him to worry, because Baphomet doesn't care about humans that much. He cares about protecting all of the Nightbreed.
It just really serves to have an opponent and an antagonist and have some sort of villain that they can fight. So that's just part of the story.
Yeah.
So they get stuck in the chicken coop, and like you said, for some reason they just can't shoot the chicken coop. We're just gonna stay out here and think about what we're gonna do. And the chickens are weird, and Cabal is still coming to terms with being the savior. He's I think this reflects something that I think stems from the confusing ending of the theatrical cuts, where it seems like he never really wants to be in charge. You don't see him stand up to all the breed and say that you guys got to defend yourselves, you guys got to do this and that. In the theatrical, you don't get to see that. And at the end, it seems like he just grabs Lori, and it's like, well, Narcisse died, all the breed are in a barn, and then he just goes well, actually, Narcisse didn't die in the theatrical.
Yeah.
But there's this big goodbye scene with Narcisse, and it's like, you'll find me and you'll need me. Yeah. But it's like, yeah, but where are you going? You have to help these people now. You're just going to take off. And, so that's what I think that kind of rubbed off in the character of Boone throughout the comics, is that the writers and the artists, they thought, well, he doesn't want to be the savior.
Yeah, he's the reluctant hero, right?
Right. He just wants to live his life with Laurie. But but in the director's cut, I think they kind of fixed that a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that the Blasphemers do while they're waiting for a plan on how to attack the coop is that they find Nick Naven's body and it gets slow roasted.
Yeah, and she doesn't seem too concerned about it. It seems like she kind of knows that she's going to have an alternative here pretty soon.
Yeah.
So while they're doing that, all of the Nightbreed inside the chicken coop are cracking open these eggs to learn about their own past and how they're going to contribute to getting out of this bad situation that they're in.
I guess it's their way of introducing some origin stories.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. In these early issues, we're still in issue number 9. So,
they were kind of cheap. I mean, like Laurie's origin story, right, was like, well, I'm a musician, but one time I took an archaeology class and I was really good at it. So therefore, when I play my guitar, skeletons will come up out of the ground and attack our enemies.
Yeah, because apparently the music was more powerful to her.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. That was a pretty big stretch there.
Yeah, because she took an archaeology class. I took a history of Japanese cinema class, so maybe in Japan. So maybe if I was a Nightbreed, I would be able to throw Japanese movies at people. I don't know.
Yeah.
You would become Tetsuo, the mechanical man.
And then there's also Guido, that his origin stems from his homophobia, which is weird.
Yeah, right. He was working on cars for this old guy who hit on him. And that's like, wait, are we missing something? There's got to be more. Why can he pull his spine out of his back?
Yeah. Like, what does that have to do with this?
Yeah, Guido reminded me of the sequence in Gods and Monsters where the movie with Brendan Fraser and Ian McKellen. Uh-huh. The same kind of reaction that he has with the lonely old man that's living off nostalgia and stuff. And so the thing is that Guido gets angry at the man when he puts his hand on his back and is like, oh, we're just two lonely old guys. And then he goes like, hey, I don't swing that way. And he leaves. And then he finds out the next day the old man killed himself that night because he was just embarrassed by what happened. But yeah, like you said, that doesn't really have any connection to why he can take his spinal column out. I even thought about, is there something going on here? Like he didn't have the spine for something, or it's like I couldn't make a connection.
I couldn't do it either. Yeah. I didn't. It was weird. It seemed like there was a piece missing.
I like the Narcisse story when he cracks the egg. We see Narcisse as the actor Chappie, but the actor Chappie whose career is seriously going under, and. He's talking to his agent, I guess, and it's like, well, there's no work for you, and for some reason, Narcisse starts talking about, well, what about Midian, that place we heard about, and it's like, what? Why would you bring that in a conversation with your agent?
Here's a quarter. Go call someone who cares.
Yeah.
Cut and print.
Yeah, cold. Print. That was a weird. Isn't that a weird catchphrase to say at the end of sentences? Cut and print.
That was cold, man.
That's like Tourette's or something. Why are you saying cut and print all the time?
And then, of course, Cabal, who no longer has a past, only has a future.
Yeah.
I think tries breaking an egg, but Nick Naven says, no, you don't have a past anymore. You've just transcended that, and now your transformation's complete.
Hey.
There's no catharsis for Boone.
That's not fair to Laurie.
Yeah. His arc is... His trauma that he needs to overcome here is that he needs to embrace his future, his role as a savior.
Yeah.
So Alan wants to charge head on into the coop. Finally, I guess someone has some sense, and things kind of precipitate themselves. And then they come up with this really contrived plan that Laurie's going to start playing the guitar, but that's not going to hold them for long. So they need an electric guitar, right?
So they need to go.
They need more power.
They need to go fix the truck so they can drive the truck to the mall and get an electric guitar that they can use to fight these guys.
Man, if that isn't a 90s idea, I don't know what is.
Now you're playing with power. Nintendo power. All I can think about is Freddy Krueger in that horrible movie where he's not even wearing a real Nintendo Power Glove because Nintendo didn't
Freddy's
want
Dead, the Final Nightmare.
Yeah.
Or Ghostbusters 2 where they use the NES Advantage joystick to control the Statue of Liberty.
Right. So Laurie starts playing a guitar and her music raises the dead for some serious shit kick in. I love that ending too.
That splash page is amazing. That is really cool with the dead coming out of the ground.
It is really, but those dead didn't really do anything to them. I guess it kind of slowed them down for a little while.
Yeah, but it's a hell of a cliffhanger though.
Yeah, it is definitely a cool way to finish it. So next issue number 10. It's attention shoppers. We got a sale on Salvation in aisle 4.
Yeah, right.
So Laurie was good in archaeology, and she likes music. So now that she's a Nightbreed, I guess what better way to make those two talents manifest as her power by her music giving life to dead things and old bones. I guess that kind of levels the playing field enough for Guido to get in the truck, fix it, get it running, drive over to the mall, buy an electric guitar, and then come back and turn in time to help, turn the tide of the battle, I guess.
Yeah.
Great plan, guys.
Did you guys understand what this thing was that Laurie resurrected out of the ground with her electric guitar?
Was it supposed to be a dinosaur?
It looked too big. It looked like a dragon or something, right?
Yeah.
Supposed to be some giant T-Rex skeleton.
But a T-Rex is like 2 times the size of a person, or maybe 3 times, right? They're not like towering over a building.
Well, you think that's bad? I mean, this guy just comes out from under the mall as if he's just buried 5 foot under.
Yeah.
Right. But I guess you can imagine that the giant skeleton was animated by Laurie's music, and he just started digging his way through the strata, and then he finds out, what is this? Oh, it's a mall. Okay, all right, fine. I'm gonna go into the Forest Cafe after this. So yeah.
You shut the door though, so it doesn't come.
So here is okay. So Mulciber. So Guido uses his. He's trying to fix the truck, and he ends up using his spinal column as an engine belt, so he can drive.
That stretches credibility. I mean, we've been suspending our disbelief for a while now, but that one is kind of like, come on. A spine is, even if it's a magical spine, is not a substitution for a fan belt.
I learned another word. I learned another word in this comic book.
What was that?
Mother humpers.
Right. It's right up there with figgin'.
They can say shit kicking, but then they have to use mother humpers. So that's funny. They're in Valley Forge, Philadelphia. Apparently, that's the Valley Forge Mall. And at one point, one of the characters is running into it and says, "Whoa, wow, 37 restaurants in the food court." Man, the 90s. What a decade for malls, right? I have to bring up this thing. Just look up the Dead Mall series. It's really funny. It shows you what's going on with the malls all across America. After their anchor stores start going down, you get a lot of dead malls out there. And so some people actually go into those dead malls, and they take a little GoPro or they take their phone and they walk through the entire mall, just documenting, this sort of thing where the malls are just empty. And I found out about mall walkers. I didn't know that was a thing, like old people that go into malls just to get their steps going.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea that was a thing. So I just learned that recently, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah, some of the big malls are built in a circle so that they can, make a lap around it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's convenient, I guess. So, so the Blasphemers have had enough of Alan. Alan keeps, bossing them around, and Mulciber seems to be disconnecting from this more and more. And so there's a funny shot here where Guido stops in front of a chiropractor inside the mall, and he's looking at a spinal column model, and he says, "Oh no, they got it all wrong."
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and then he sees in the glass that the enemies are approaching. You know, and I just love these like little jokes. Some of them are, you know, they're cheesy, but I appreciate it. There's a lot of humor in this. And the details.
It's funny how there are some areas where they can get away with a lot, like they could rip people in half and cut people's heads off and stuff, but they can't say, you know, they can't say like friggin' even. They have to say figgin'.
Yeah.
Or mother humpers.
Mother humpers, yeah. So there's some product placement here. I'm not sure if this is actual product placement, but they talk about Baskin-Robbins. They talk about the sharper image.
Yeah.
They make some jokes like badasses by Baskin-Robbins, I guess. That's kind of a joke. But so, yeah, they find a music store. And then they go in there, and Lori gets her electric guitar. So it's time to rock. So, yeah, there's some interesting alliterations here that I wrote down. Like there's someone talks about a mantle of midnight messiah, referring to Boone, I think. So that's interesting alliteration there.
Yeah. So then when she gets her electric guitar, of course, she summons this gigantic dinosaur monster thing, you know, that's dead. And does it destroy the whole mall, right? Do they kill everybody in the mall?
I mean, practically, it rips right through the roof of it.
Yeah, it's like we're gonna stop you from eating human flesh. We're gonna kill every single person in this mall.
I'm guessing since it was nighttime that there weren't a lot of people there, and they kind of run out. And so meanwhile, Cabal hits Mulciber with a magic egg to crack the shell of backstory exposition.
Yes.
So
yeah, like, and that's when we learned that Mulciber was really a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Which it seems like a little bit of a cheat because like they came up with this later because Mulciber doesn't act like a kid and anytime up until like this issue and maybe the one before it. You know.
Well, yeah. We don't know when this happened, though. I mean, this might have happened like 5 years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
But when he changed, he turned into what looked like an adult-sized.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
It's kind of like what's going on with Chatter, the kid in Hellbound, when he reverts back to being a child, when his body of Chatter was really an adult. Yeah, so Danny Mulciber. Has a repressive religious mother, has a pretty bland father, gets involved sexually with a girl in the theater. And I think it's not obvious, but I kind of looked at the little panel to try to figure out what movie they're watching. And I think it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, if you look at it.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah, nice touch there. Yeah. And then the girl, I guess we are meant to think that she might have been a Nightbreed herself.
Yeah.
Because she kind of tells him, "Oh, touch me here and there," and it's like, "Oh," and then it seems like something grabs him and knocks him under the chairs, and the girl says, "Welcome to the night."
Yeah.
So that's
and so that him watching the black and white Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I guess that's meant to sort of date the time period when this happened to him.
So, sure, we can go by that. Yes, yeah, sure, yeah.
So maybe, I mean, he was a kid back then, but then that was like 40 years ago. So maybe he's an adult now, or he's sort of grown up as a Nightbreed.
Mm-hmm. Could be. So and then he uses this exposition flashback to justify why he is so engaged in just breaking all the laws and doing what he wants. He says he wants to be the monster that he wants to be. He turned as a monster when he was a teenager. It's a bit like the Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon turning into a monster once he doesn't have to look at himself in the mirror. I guess this is kind of the same thing. He's turned into a monster, so now he feels like he should act like a monster. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then he kind of crumples up after this whole memory kind of gets a realization of his secret shame or his secret sorrow, and Alan doesn't like this. He thinks that Mulciber is wussing out, so he decides to make a bold move, and he says, "Well, you guys are trying to wuss out on me. I'm he kills Aiello. He just slashes her neck, and he just says, well, you guys are not going to make me a Nightbreed. I'm just going to take it for myself. And he slashes Aiello and kind of plays with her blood and drinks it or eats it or whatever. He goes like, I feel the power, So, and then he starts turning.
And he turns into what he wants to be, which is the biggest. He wants to be this
biggest and the strongest, right?
So he's a big muscle Nightbreed dude.
Well, guess what? He's still no match for the T-Rex jaws.
Yeah.
It's like watching an episode of One Punch Man when the enemy turns into his final form, and then One Punch Man just punches them once, and that's it. And same here. Alan turns into a Nightbreed.
One Punch Man, but in my head, I've seen it already now.
Oh, it's an anime. It's really awesome. I think you would enjoy it because you're into like Japanese stuff and anime. So look it up. The main character is a guy called Saitama, and he's so powerful. He trained himself to be so powerful that he only needs to take one punch to kill every single enemy. Yeah. It seems like it would be hindering to the story, but it's really not. It becomes kind of the gimmick of it.
Huh.
But so, Mulciber riding the skull of the giant T-Rex kind of guides the jaws into getting this Alan, and it just chomps on him, and that's it. He's gone. So
and then the T-Rex thing falls on Mulciber, right?
Yeah, everything.
And why is Mulciber naked while he's riding the thing?
Yeah, right.
Like,
he was wearing.
He just all of a sudden loses his clothes.
It's ride or die, baby. Ride or die. Yeah. It's like he's like the general that's strapped to the A-bomb in Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah.
He's just going with it. So that's it. Ride or die.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, everything falls on him with the thrashing T-Rex skeleton. There's a fire going on, and just the mall is totally wrecked. So they all escape. Mulciber is left behind. We're led to assume that he's dead. Mm-hmm. And then everybody's buddy all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell? You guys were trying to kill each other, and now it's all, okay, well, sorry about that, guys. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Right, Greg killed he killed somebody from the wrong side. I mean, I guess that helped.
Yeah, I guess.
That made him everyone's enemy.
So the Blasphemers come to grips with their failure, but there's a silver lining because Nick Niven lost her body. So she wants to talk to Oral about a proposition that would be mutually beneficial. So since she only has a head, now she's going to take Aiello's body for herself, and it works. So I guess you just pop it out, pop it back in. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, who cares? Who cares about the people they've killed to date, right? I mean, everybody's friend now. They're all on the same side. They're all Nightbreed, I guess.
Yeah.
But still, it's I don't know, man. I'm not happy with this because it's like there should be some sort of accountability here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All that death and destruction for nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, at least they learned to work as a team. Boone accepted the Cabal moniker. And at the end, you have this big section called it's not a letter section yet. Mm-hmm. It's more like the editors talking. So they just announced that they have big plans for the future of the comic.
Right, and it's the beginning of the letters section, but they don't have any to put in there yet. So it's all talking about the future of the comic and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And that brings us to issue 11, and I know that I think issue 11 and 12, unfortunately, David, you got sidetracked by the Nightbreed archive because they introduced Jihad into this, right?
Yep, correct. Yeah, for the rest of it.
Right. So I think, Ryan, we're going to talk about Jihad at a later date, right?
Yeah. So the next one we'll do, because I think chronologically, Jihad comes after number 11, which doesn't make any sense because 11 and 12 are a two-part series.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's how these things happen with crossovers.
Yeah. And I'll need to go and get the rest of the comics because unfortunately IDW never finished reprinting them for whatever reason.
Oh.
They only did just the volume 1 of the archive.
Oh, Boom?
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, Boom, yeah.
So issue 11, the birthing of that which was. And I have to say, you're not missing out on much here, David, because there's a new artist taking on pencils for this issue called Mark Nelson. The opening is not very good. This comic seems to be in trouble already. And at this point, they were being bi-monthly, struggling to become monthly from what they say in the Breeding Ground article in the last comic. So they're finding a team to get it going. But we see Boone and Laurie are still basically living the hobo life, you know? They're still like, oh, this is great. Next time we should sleep on a gas station bathroom floor, maybe. Yeah. Because they're just sleeping on this old train car. Yeah. Boone and Laurie, last issue's realization didn't really take them very far. But this completely goes in a different direction now. Like, we see a temple in Central America. There's talking bugs. There's a talking saber-toothed tiger. There's a giant slug. At this point, I have no idea what's going on here.
Yeah. They switched the narrative to talk, and it seemed like these were written sort of independently so that they could fit in anywhere in the narrative within the that they could just throw this in any time in the Nightbreed series without it affecting the rest of the series. Because this is totally a side story that doesn't have any characters that we recognize.
So this seems to be this temple that we see in Central America seems to be an old haunt of the Nightbreed. So basically what they're going with is that the old gods, Tezcatlipoca and Izpapalotl, they're like these Mayan gods or Aztec. And I'm sorry if I'm mixing two things that are completely different.
It was in Peru, I think, is where this is.
Okay. So it's a place that apparently these guys went to after the fall of Midian, and they are still clinging to the old ways, even though they do talk about Baphomet. So you know that they know about Baphomet. So they probably came out of Midian. Yeah. And I guess the theme here is that they want to live again. They want to be worshipped by humans. They want to go back to the old ways, which of course is impossible. And then there's a human expedition going up the river, so they get a very Apocalypse Now vibe.
Yes, yeah, and some of these characters, a lot of them are not relatable at all. I mean, they're just terrible people. Flat characters in some cases. Carlos is the river guide, who seems like he's, at the beginning he seems like a really, pragmatic, sort of interesting, practical person. But then as soon as they see one of these Nightbreed characters, the saber-toothed tiger one, he just goes nuts and starts worshiping it and tricks the whole party into leading them straight to them. Mm-hmm. And Kevin is a little boy that should not have been taken here. I mean, that's the other crazy thing. His parents are arguing all the time because his mother thought that somehow her local newspaper would publish a story if she went on this journey and created some kind of a story. It's like, what does a local newspaper need a story about, her expedition in Peru?
Yeah, I know. But there's other two guys who are just, I guess, hunters or buddies, and their taglines are just, "Hey, do you want a brewski? Hey, do you want a brewski?" Oh my God. Even after, like, someone dies, one of the guys just going to talk to the other one is like, "Okay, hey, bro, have a brewski." And, and there's a photographer, a female photographer. She's the one who kind of takes the little boy under her wing when her parents are arguing. And so they're going up the river. They're going on an expedition. And they come across a boat full of soldiers with guns. And so there's some tension here, and then they're boarded by these people, and the two bros that are drinking beer just kind of get into an argument, and there's a gunfight. The boat runs ashore and explodes. They escape into the forest, and the soldiers go back. They're like, "Oh, okay, their fuel exploded. They don't have a boat. We'll just go and let the jungle take care of them." So, and in the meantime, they do go out into the jungle and they set up a camp. And I'm going to call it, I don't want to say the whole name of these creatures.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to call them Tezcat. So, Tezcat.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's Tezcat
and is Papalotl. Yeah, Tezcat Lipoca and is
Yeah.
Papalotl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, is Papalotl. Yeah, I'm just calling Tezcat. Tezcat shows up, and, well, I guess he's hungry, you know?
Yeah.
And so they see this giant, crazy saber-toothed cat, and I think there's one guy that gets killed or mauled.
Yeah, one of
right?
the Brewski guys gets ripped in half.
To what? To the point where the woman who wanted to get a story for her newspaper just blurts out, "Hey, this is just what my article needs." I'm not kidding.
God.
That is exactly her line.
Yeah.
Hey, this is just what my article needs.
Yeah.
So okay, someone just died, but she's still thinking about her story.
Well, what's even worse is Kevin's father comes back to after this happened. He comes back to the kid. He's like, "So, how's your vacation going so far? Is this better than? How's it compared to Disney World?" And he goes, "Well, it's better because the lines are better." It's like somebody just got ripped in half.
I know, that poor kid, man.
Yeah,
he's like Cleveland Jr. So yes, and the whole point of Tezcat and Izpap, I'm going to call him Izpap.
Yeah.
Izpap is a giant slug. Yeah. So their thing is they just wanted to go there just for the sake of visiting their old haunts, but Tezcat actually gets, really obsessed with the idea that he could like teach these humans the old ways again and have them worship him and do human offerings.
Yeah.
So basically get someone to come up to the temple and get their heart taken out and offered to them and stuff.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to eat it. He refuses when they try to give him blood because of the law. He doesn't want to break the law. He just wants to be worshipped.
Right. So Breeding Grounds tells a reader letter that this comic was conceptualized as a book with revolving art teams. They announced that Gene Colan is going to do a story at one point, and I think I have a original art page from this story with Gene Colan. Another reader letter brings up the point of Narcissus' decapitation, and that's when they do promise, like you said, Ryan, they promised that they would write a story explaining how that happened. I'm not sure if they ever did that.
No,
so
I don't think so.
That's issue 11. And then it continues to issue 12 called The Masks of God.
Yeah.
That's a cool opening, right? A quick recap of what happened in Nightbreed and nice shot of the ruins of Midian and Boone in front of the Wall of Prophecy. So I guess it's just, for those of you who just joined us.
Yeah, they have to do something to say, hey, this is still a Nightbreed story. Here's some characters you know. And then they go back to this continuing this other story.
And
then basically the guide guides them to the temple, where Tezcat is, and everybody's like, "Hey, you said we were going around the temple. You lied to us." And he shows up, and the woman who wants to get the story, he turns her into like an acolyte, convinces her to cut her husband's heart out.
Yeah. And before that, the expedition members just start turning against each other. Everybody's bickering, and at one point, the woman who wanted to come in this expedition to write her story starts blaming her husband for coming to this place. She says, "Well, you took us in this vacation." It's like, what are you talking about? You're the one who's been saying that you wanted to do this story.
Yeah.
But at this point, I was getting really bored by the story, so I was Tezcat and Izpap have an argument at one point because Izpap doesn't want Tezcat to continue doing what he's doing. Yeah. He says that, it's against the law. But then, Tezcat basically threatens Izpap and says, "Hey, slug, if by the time I come back you're still here, you better start learning how to move fast." And so
because I'm getting hungry and I'm going to eat. There's no law saying that I can't eat you.
Yeah. And then the lady goes into the ruins where she finds Tezcat, like you said, and they mate, I guess. There's two different panels where it seems like those two characters are doing something together, but they're never shown doing it in the same panel. So I don't know if they actually do anything sexual, but...
Oh, I thought she was just like putting her hand on his fur and stuff. I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a page where there's 2 panels and it looks like they're doing something and whatever. So he puts her under his control. They return to the camp, and like you said, she is totally turned at this point. She kills her husband. Carlos dominates the other guy, and they take the boy. And so what happens to Ispap in the meantime?
Yeah, so then Ispap takes there's that photographer lady that's the most sympathetic character in the whole thing. Meets Ispap, and something happens there. She cuts something out of her, or cuts open her skin or something. She does something. She called it a sacrifice. I didn't really understand, but somehow it triggers the metamorphosis where the slug can turn into the flying bug creature that she becomes.
Like she puts her bloody hands on him and spreads blood all over his surface, and that's what triggers the metamorphosis. And so at this point, it's like these 2 gods have reached their final form, and they're going to fight. Yeah. And they do. So the whole point is it's basically the trope at the end of Nosferatu. So the Ispap is fighting Tezcat and just basically keeping them there until the sun comes up.
Yeah.
And when it does, they burn.
Yeah.
But did it really happen?
Yeah, it did. I mean, the little bug. There's a little bug friend of theirs named Troubadour. We didn't really talk about him, but he likes the stories and he likes telling stories. So they show at the very end, Troubadour has flown into the window of some family and whispered the story to this kid while he's sleeping, and then he wakes up and remembers the story, and that's what they're talking about when he says, "Was this all a dream?" Because those aren't any characters we've seen before. Those are just some kids that live nearby, or like some kid that lives nearby with his mom.
Oh, okay. I get it. I was going to say that I was wondering if it was all a dream because the kid, for a moment I thought it was the same kid, but the other kid is blonde and this kid has brown hair. So yeah, you're right. So he's just spreading the story of it as a dream so the people of that area will still continue to keep Tezcat and Ispap in their local folklore, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think that's the idea.
Because they have a caption at the end that says, "Legends, it's been said, aren't born or made, they just are." And that's when you hear the little bug reciting the story to the boy in his sleep. So that's it. And then they end this on another exciting thing, saying, "Next up, Rawhead Rex."
Yeah. But we'll be talking about Jihad the next time we go into Nightbreed comics. We'll be talking about Jihad next. I think not only are those my favorite Nightbreed comics, but they might be my favorite comics of all time.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I think they're great. I mean, I have to reread those. I remember being a little disappointed at the end. I just didn't understand really what was the big deal about Leviathan just changing, merging with how that changed the universe of both Nightbreed and Hellraiser, because we never really got any continuation to what that would entail in terms of mixing those 2 things together. So, but I guess we'll talk about that on the next time we talk about these comic books.
Yeah, and of course we'll still be doing news episodes and interviews. So this may not be the very next episode that we do, but it'll be sometime in the near future. We'll come back to the Nightbreed comics again.
All right. So thanks for joining us, and thanks, David, for joining us again as well. And,
no problem.
What's up next for the Cinema Bluster podcast?
We are taking a break for a couple weeks. We'll be back probably in mid-October, and I think we're going to cover the Child's Play series of films because the new one comes out in October.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I'll definitely listen to that one. So it's going to be you and Travis?
5 of those?
Yep. Yeah, I think they're up to 7 now. I think the new one is 7. Okay. Yeah. But they're releasing a big box set that looks like the Good Guy dolls that comes out October 3rd or 4th, and it has the new one already in it. So I think this is the first time that they've released a brand new box set on the release date of a movie, and it has all of the films in it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I've only seen the first one, and I saw that in a drive-in.
Oh, yeah. Some of the sequels are fun, yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen any of those movies.
Something to catch up on for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end.
You can find the show notes for this episode as well as lots of news and features at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave comments there or get them directly into the podcast by clicking the Send Voicemail tab on the right. Please follow us on Twitter at BarkerCast or at Occupy Midian. Like us on Facebook and join the Occupy Midian Facebook group. You can listen on the site or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, Google Play, and Double Twist. Look for our apps in the iTunes Store or Google Play Store. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Please take a couple of minutes to leave us a review on iTunes. It means the world to us and helps us spread the word about Clive Barker. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial fan site and podcast that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Films. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.